This is ContactTalkRadio.com, consciousness in action, and you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to What the Health, an independent approach to your health span. Have you noticed how our healthcare system may not have your best interest in mind? Join Dr. Eckel in this fun and sometimes disturbing exploration of the state of healthcare and what it means for you. Now, here's your host, Dr. Eckel.
Welcome back, everybody. I am Dr. Greg Eckel, and this is What the Health. And our topic today is how light, sound, and vibration are being used in brain health. And I have the illustrious Dr. Patrick K. Porter on the show today. I'm going to give you a good introduction. He's an award-winning author, speaker, and founder of BrainTap, which I personally use, and it's an awesome device, so I'm excited to dig in on that. The leader in enhanced meditation. Dr. Porter pioneered the use of brainwave entrainment to improve clarity, sleep, and energy, and remains at the forefront of scientific research. He founded BrainTap with the goal of making his technology accessible to everyone. BrainTap offers over 1,000 original audio sessions and 12 languages, and serves a worldwide user base with his mobile app and headset. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, People, Entrepreneur, INC, Inc. Magazine, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of the outlets, as an expert in brain health and wellness. And in 2020, he received the IAFNR Lifetime Achievement Award. Without further ado, welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Greg. Great to be here.
Yes, and I am so excited to make this connection and bring you out to the listeners and viewers of What the Health. We are really, why I created this platform is to take the information directly to people. And you are really a man with a mission, and this whole entrainment, you've really been at the leading edge of this revolution, I would call it. And I've been a firm believer in sound and light as the future of medicine, and your tech brings it all together. So, our component of how light, sound, and vibration are being used in brain health, this is near and dear to me, and we've got it really put together. I want to start out, though, with it really on the broad topic of, how does stress affect a person's health?
Well, the key thing with, especially regards to the brain, your hippocampus can shrink 1/4 of an inch in 1 year just by living the low-level, stressed-out life that we just lived in 2020.
Wow.
So, and we were stressed out before that. So, right. People were stressed. So what happens is, think about I like to put it in the context of putting somebody in a situation. You're at a party, you just met 5 new people, they all introduce themselves. 50 minutes later, you're cornered by one of them. You know their name, but you can't remember it. And then as soon as they walk away and the stress is gone, their name pops in your head. Well, that's because under stress, just like stress in your hand, if I tighten my muscles, blood doesn't flow freely, circulation doesn't happen. But if I'm relaxed, blood flows freely, circulation. That means those neurons that are meant to fire together, can bring you that information. When they're stressed out, they're not getting the information they need in the form of nutrients, oxygen, all the things our brain needs. So stress is key. Mainly on another note too, we have a gut-brain axis. It's not just a brain in our head. We have 3 brains I want people to really think about. Yeah. We have a heart brain that has 40,000 neutrino cells. That's actually the one that runs the show. That's why there's more heart attacks on Monday morning than any other day of the week. And that's a stress heart attack because people don't like their job. Now, I don't know what happened in 2020 because everybody'd roll out of bed, flip open their laptop, they're at work. So I don't know, what happened
that's
there.
Spread out. Yeah, for sure.
But when you're stressed, people are taking some of the world's greatest supplements, right? But when you're stressed out, your body goes into that fight or flight, or what we would call the sympathetic nervous system kicks on. Mm-hmm. We call it the survivor brain. Some people can think about it that way. And so that means your body doesn't care about digesting food anymore. It puts blood out to your muscles so you can run away from that saber-toothed tiger or that whatever that stressful event was. Well, these bodies were designed, or not designed, but they were evolved, however you want to look at it, from the Serengeti, right? We're all living in usually we would maybe come across a life-threatening event 5, maybe 10 times a week. That can happen before breakfast for some people, and it starts with the alarm clock, just triggering the nervous system. And when the nervous system is hijacked, then we can't digest our food. So what that does, it proves the medical doctors correct that say, when you take those supplements, you just have expensive urine. Well, that's because your body's not metabolizing it. We did one study actually with a group in Provo, Utah that was doing IV supplements for brain health and addiction. And we showed that because they could do it through a urine analysis, 30% more of the nutrient was absorbed when they were doing BrainTap at the same time. And that was light, sound, and vibration. So while they're relaxed getting that IV, instead of being on their cell phones, texting or playing a game, which has its own negatives, that are happening, the person is able to relax. When we're relaxed, we're in that parasympathetic state, that rest, digest, healing state. I call it the thriving brain. So if we can get people more into the thriving brain, now it's okay to be stressed. I mean, without stress, we don't grow, right? So our bodies are designed to, some people will create stress even if they don't have it, because they know that they've had those breakthroughs, those epiphanies in their life when they were stressed out, then they broke through those barriers. But some people get addicted really to the stress instead of the breaking through the barrier part.
For sure. Yeah, right. The adrenaline junkies, or creating the upset and the crisis just to kind of get those hits. So that's fascinating. You did a study on nutrient absorption in a parasympathetic activity, and you showed that they absorbed 30% more of the vitamin by measuring the urine afterwards of what came through the body. So that kind of begs the question here into, well, what is BrainTap? Like, how did you get to this spot of entrainment and really focusing in on the parasympathetics and coherence, really?
I'll shorten the story a little bit for the listeners because we don't have 3 days to go through it. Yeah. But if I can take you back in time to when I was 12 years old, my dad was visited by the church elders. Father Fitzpatrick and Sister Mary showed up. My dad was a very gifted alcoholic. Everything could be going really well, and he'd find a reason to go take a 2 or 3 day vacation. And the family would suffer. We had 9 kids in our family, so it was a pretty bad situation. So the church was always trying to help us out. They said, Michael, we want to take you to this meditation program that's going on at the church and see if we can help you to relax. And he's like, because his biggest problem was he used alcohol as his relaxer. And we know that if he could have managed it, maybe it would have worked. But we pretty much all know that after 2 drinks, you're not driving the bus anymore. Freddy Krueger takes over, especially if you're an alcoholic. And so he went and took this training class, and he learned to do technology-driven meditation because they used what would be called today an isochronic tone generator. And it generated a sound like the mountains. And everybody in the room's relaxing, and you'd go to something called Level. It was a Silva mind class. Silva mind control was what it was called. And my dad became so inspired, he became a Silva instructor. So he thought, if it's good enough for everybody else, it's good enough for my family. He went home and he taught us all how to do it. I went from, I tell people Sister Barbara really liked me. That's why I was 2 years in 2nd grade. But it was really because I was a troublemaker. I didn't really have it, and I was always in the special classes. I couldn't read. I was my math problem. But as soon as I started meditating and using this sound that they had, so from a very early age, in fact, I recorded my very first recording for myself at the age of 12. If people out there remember cassettes, which was popular, they just came out when this happened. We were going from 8 tracks to cassettes, and this was a wild thing because people could record their own material, right? So my dad taught me to record my own affirmations, and I started waking up every morning to my affirmation track, and that changed my life. And then I went to school for electronics. So because I was never going to do actually what I'm doing today for a living. That's what my dad did. My dad went back to school, got his degree in psychology, and really changed his life from that moment of learning how to meditate, helped his family. We only have 1 out of our 9 kids that didn't really understand the odds. It's like playing Russian roulette. If your parent is an alcoholic and he has problems, but he's over it as of right now. He's fine right now. But, it's one of those things he has to live with it every day because he pushed the envelope.
Mhm.
But what happened with me was, the long story short was I've always been a meditator, and I got introduced to a technology in the 80s that was about it was a little over $10,000. It was called a sensory input learning system. And but you had to run it by hand. So if you can think of neurofeedback devices where somebody's sitting there. So I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
I was a researcher for a group called Light and Sound Research out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And we were building a new machine, and things happened. In fact, the founder of the company died. He didn't leave any information about his product, but we brought in engineers, and with my background, we created the very first portable light and sound machine. It's called the MC Square. And we took it to the Consumer Electronics Show. We got the best new gadget of the year in '89. But imagine something from the future showing up. This was before CDs, before cell phones were really popular. I mean, I remember back then a cell phone bill would be around $1,000. So not very many people bought them every month, right? So, but what happened was from there, we started a franchise company. I sold that in 2006. And then in 2013, I wanted to get back in because I wanted to redesign what I had done. There'd been no improvements in this field really since way back when. And it still works. I mean, the old equipment does still have a good result, but I wanted to add in those light. When somebody sees the headset, they go, why does he put lights in the ears?
Yeah.
Well, our body, we are literally light beings.
Yeah.
When you think some people think that's a metaphysical concept. It's not anymore. Science has proven that we share information, not only within ourselves through the dura of our body, like fiber optics, but we actually share through photobiomodulation in biophotons in information with other people. Like the reason people can see me is my photons are being shared digitally through the quantum field, and it shows up on the other end on their computer screen.
And they're lovely, Patrick.
Thank you. So what happens is that light, because our body, the most underprescribed nutrient on earth today is light. And, in being sequestered to your home and not told to go out, we need light from the sun. And just one example for the listeners, if you don't get to bed by 10 o'clock at night or between 10 and 2, some people, it depends on who you are, you will not make as much melatonin. And that's because every cell of your body they have what they're called chromophores, which is, think of them like little batteries. They're storing energy, and they get that energy from light and sound. And so our ears take in energy because all the blood in our body goes through our ears every 3 to 4 minutes. The rest of the body takes about 45 seconds. So it's really fast. The blood's pumping. But we want to slow that blood down in a place here. So now we can do something called photobiomodulation. We can blood dope. Those hemoglobin get filled with the light source that we give it, which is a 630 nanometer light and a 470 nanometer light. And these are lights that we're trying to always mimic nature. So I say, what does nature do? What do we do in nature? And how can we do that naturally with technology? Because we're not all going to be able to go out to the ocean or to the mountains. So we're going to send that light frequency into the brain through the bloodstream, because that's the first place it goes from the ears. A good amount of it goes right into the brain. So we're going to feed the brain the light. And what happens is through something called apoptosis, the cells, for the doctors who listen will know what that is. What it means is there's going to be an energy exchange at the cellular level, and ATP production happens, and also nitric oxide. And so these are two things, if they're present at the site of an injury, immediately begin to heal it. And we have an innate intelligence, right, in our body, that if everything arrives there at the right time and the right amounts, our body can literally stay alive, according to Harvard, forever, because they had a chicken heart alive for 35 years.
Yeah.
So all they had to do was make sure that it got nutrients, it got the toxins out, and then it got light. As long as it was getting those things, they could keep a chicken heart not attached to a chicken alive for 35 years. So our cells, our cellular health, and there's so much out there now. People are learning about cellular health and the mitochondria and all of that. So what we're doing is we're taking what nature does, and we're imitating it with the BrainTap. Now, the reason we have lights in the eyes, when people go, why do we have lights in the eyes? Well, your eyes are not just attached to your brain. Your eyes are brain matter. So if we want the brain to absorb light, we need to get it in there. Now, it's very sensitive to light or energy. It could be any light. The reason we use 470 nanometer light in the eyes, it's not enough to really penetrate that deeply, and we only use 8 LEDs, but your eyes are closed. but your body is still going to get the energy information, and it's going to be absorbed into the body. Now, if somebody has blue eyes or green, they're not going to need as much light, because those people with those eyes are from northern regions usually, and so their body has been evolved over time to bring in more light. But if you live down in the southern United States or down south, usually darker eyes, because you can handle more light. So we have it set so you can bring in as much as you want. But that light also, we have a frontal lobe, right, in our brain, and that's what stresses out. So when you ask the question about stress, usually that part gets hijacked, because we don't need that part to survive. We need our primitive brain, to get us the heck out of there. We don't need to think about the best route. We just need to get out of there. That's why in the military they practice all these scenarios. But when the light is going, that part of the brain stays active. If you're meditating or doing a relaxation technique without it, usually the frontal lobe shuts down. In fact, we've done over 30,000 brain scans, and we show that we might be able to talk about the different brainwave states, but delta is a sleep state, right? So all brainwaves are happening simultaneously in a healthy brain, but your delta while you're awake should be below 10% of your brain's activity on a healthy brain. But we're finding that over 90% of the people we see are well into the 60s and 70% of delta while they're awake. So what that tells us is, it tells us there's a lot of inflammation going on, maybe brain trauma, but also that they're using a lot of biologics to stay active, which means they're doing coffees, teas, stimulants, sugar, something's driving the system. And if you drive the system with the biological system, you can, but if you can get to work with the electrical system, now you've got, our body is designed with the three systems are, if you want to kind of think about it, is there's the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and neurohormonal. And if those three are communicating correctly, we have a healthy system. If they aren't, we get stuck in those gears. Like with stress, what happens is we might get stuck in that gear where we have high delta and high beta with no alpha and theta activity. This is what we see mostly in adults that can't sleep. So they're super stressed or they're dead tired. I mean, they go to exhaustion, and they might pass out in their living room watching a movie, but then they get to their bed and they can't sleep.
Right. They just lie there. They say, "Oh, I just won't shut down." Right. Interesting. So you're putting those folks into the camp of they need rest. They need better rest.
And they need ATP. See, one thing is that if the body's not producing that at a cellular level, your body's going to rob Peter to pay Paul. It's going to, and pretty soon the banker's going to come with the banknote. And what it's going to do, it's going to find the part of the body that's the missing link or the weak link, right? And it's going to say, "Oh, it's your pancreas. So now you get pancreatic cancer. Oh, it's my joints. Oh, you get arthritis." Because those are all signs of stress disorders first, and then the body isn't able to keep up with the toxic load. And so then it starts making crystallization or whatever and starts causing issues to happen. Yeah, this is what we're talking about, is the root of dis-ease. Like, this is it, folks. With your body, the way that I talk about that, Patrick, is like the body is just sending like, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. Yeah. And we kind of have been taught to like just squelch it, suppress the symptom, carry on, and we're seeing the manifestation of all of that disease on chronic illness in the United States and around the globe is really around these stress disorders that if we were taught young enough to say, wait a minute, you want to be in coherence and in that balance and pay attention to your body, because it is really the guide of where we're going. So I wanted to just say, it's like a lot of people, everyone knows that friend that used to have a light that came on on their car, and they say, "Oh, I see your light's not on." "Oh no, I put black tape over it." That's what prescription medicine is, black tape over the problem.
Yeah, just the masking of symptoms. And so this is really, it is revolutionary. And I'm really, like I said, so excited to have you on the show and get this out to folks. So brain tapping in essence, I mean, you've talked about it, a couple things. You've got the earphones with lights, you've got glasses with lights. What else is happening with the system? Because it's more than just the pieces and parts here.
Yeah. So each of these are very successful on their own. Photobiomodulation, our science officer was actually the first person to ever publish on photobiomodulation in the brain. He's actually in, I think it's Handler's book from Harvard. He's wrote a chapter in there. So there's a lot of different ways to get light into the brain. Could be lasers, skull caps, things like that. So we use those too. So that's good. But if you can't afford the headset, you can use just the app, because the app alone, our ears, when I'm talking about taking energy, put it in perspective, our ears take in over 25,000 pieces of information, but we only act on 40 of them. If you and I, Greg, were at a meal, let's say we're out to dinner and we're talking, having a conversation, and somebody 2 tables or 3 tables over says, "Hey, did you know Dr. Eckel's doing," and your name was mentioned, your ears would perk up. You would hear it, even though you didn't hear all the other conversation, because your brain that wasn't important at the time, but that word was. And that's your reticular activating system that's going. So what your body does with that information is, it's not only information that it hears and acts on, but information that gives us energy. And to give an example, if we were at a party, let's say you said, I don't really want to go, but you'd go because you're my friend and I need somebody there, a wingman or whatever. Yeah. So you're there and we're talking, and pretty soon I notice your foot's tapping and you're going, "Hey, this is pretty good." And what happened was the music got your body going, got some ATP production, because every cell of your body is a converter of energy. So it's going to take, that's why EMF and that kind of thing is so bad for us, because our body doesn't know what to do with that information. It says, what is this information? And causes confusion. And on another note, that's why we need to ground. I don't like to mention a problem without a solution. You can get rid of that. You can get rid of that by getting out onto the earth or using some kind of grounding mats and things like that. But you need to be looking at that, especially if you're the 25% of the people that find when you drive by a cell tower, you get a little bit of a headache or something. Yeah. Some people are really ultra sensitive to that.
Super. And that is a component that we are educating about, right? I mean, that is a whole nother discussion on the information, but this really resonates in, we are actually light beings, right? We are receiving and giving off light. I mean, we can measure it on MRIs of the biophoton release from the cell. When that study came out, it was beyond woo-woo. Now we've got real science behind it. And kind of the quantum component with medicine and physics and medicine coming together. It's such an exciting time to be alive and see this research.
Yeah. And you can tell that too because of the wearables we have now with heart rate variability. Yeah. If you have good heart rate variability, you probably have good energy transference. If you have bad heart rate variability, you probably have low energy. We measure that at our clinic. And when we're out at trade shows and things like that, we have a device that does that. But a lot of people, they wonder why they don't heal. They have no energy. Yeah. I mean, you can't start a fire without sticks and maybe matches.
Well, you speak into that heart rate variability a bit, because you can't compare one person's heart rate variability to another person. So it's individualized, but there are some guidances around the heart rate variability. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What we want to look at is, let's say we all know someone who has a traumatic thing happen in the morning and they're still talking about it at night, maybe even the next week. They can't get rid of it. They can't disengage. I always like to use the example of like a quarterback like Tom Brady. He has a very short memory. What that means is his nervous system doesn't get locked into the negative. Some people, if they threw 3 interceptions in the first half, they wouldn't be able to come out and throw 4 touchdowns in the next half and win, but he did, right? So we all have the whole thing about heart rate variability is we're going to get stressed. You're lying to yourself if you think you're going to take some magical program or learn some special technique that's going to get rid of stress. It's how do we mitigate the stress? And I love the saying when they say, you don't pray to God to get rid of your challenges. You pray to God to give you the energy and resources to get through them, and thrive, and that's really what we're talking about. So we don't want people with a victim mentality. We want to empower them to know we have, like, for instance, right now, we have very powerful immune systems. We have something called psychoimmunology. And I'm not sure if your listeners know who Dr. Emoto is, but he wrote the book, The Secret Life of Water. Yeah. And I was fortunate while he was alive to meet him a couple of times. And just a month ago, I interviewed his team because I wanted to know if they did any research on water molecules and stress and other things. And they did. And it's pretty fascinating what happens to our body. We're 70% water, right? And we actually can influence or structure the water. And they showed when you think about COVID, it looked pretty bad. But if you put COVID in fear, it looked like a demonic process. Yeah. But if you put COVID in gratitude or compassion, it neutralized COVID.
This is so, I love it, because we have not been taught how powerful we really are. We don't even know the full capabilities of this beingness yet on the planet. And so this is such an exciting conversation to get out there. On that component on heart rate variability, then, so on the studies that you're showing, and for folks that don't know, that is around your coherence of your ability to be in parasympathetic, the rest and healing mode of the body, and your recovery index, right? So stress is not evil. There was this psychiatrist that got on stage and she basically started her TED Talk saying, I've been killing people for 30 years. And you go, what? And she said, I've been saying a negative connotation with stress, and it keeps us alive. We need that good balance and the ability to have the stressor, but then, like you're saying in the Tom Brady model, which I think is a great one people can visualize, you can just drop it and move on and, go win the Super Bowl, like come back in the fourth quarter and, really tear it up. So heart rate variability are there certain levels of numbers that you're looking for people as far as a healthy number, or is it between, it is on the variability?
Yeah, well, we had one designed for us from the people who own the patents in Russia. Actually, they're the ones that have because they put it out in the cosmonaut program. So I went directly to them and said, I wanted some graphics. And what we really want to show is we should be at a third parasympathetic, a third a sympathetic, and a third neurohormonal. And that's kind of like the balance, and I know you're into like Tai Chi and balance like that. And so everything is about balance. Yeah. So it's not being, if you're too parasympathetic, then you'll become a California surfer. If you're too sympathetic, you become a New York stock market guy.
Right. Yeah.
But if you get burned out on either of those, what happens is your neurohormonal kicks in. And most people think of the neurohormonal system kind of like an emergency generator. That should only come on. It's there only when it's necessary. And that's the reserves that we tap into. But if people are using their reserves all the time, so what we're looking at is, are they a third? And how we measure that is across a 500 heartbeat session. So we can measure the RR signal, and we get that information, feeds back into the system. And then what we show is, you can also do this, where you sit down and stand up and those kind of readings. But we're really more concerned about getting a baseline and what is the therapy doing to train. So what we showed in our one study we just finished in Australia, we did a sleep study with, these were people who were working in the mines. So they were third shift workers. Of course, they weren't sleeping well. That's a really bad scenario anyway, just working third shift. The first thing we had to do was teach them to not drink in the morning. That was kind of a crazy study because they're used to having their meal, for them, it's their evening. So they're having a beer before they start their work. And of course, that's just a downhill cycle from there. But in the process, what we showed was the study was a 6-week study. But even after that 6 weeks of using BrainTap, sleeping, which we got phenomenal results, we're going to be publishing those results. But they had a 2-week washout, which means we didn't do anything. But we measured their HRV afterwards. They continued to improve because the brain learned how to modulate, really, or be in coherence. When you're stressed, you should be stressed. Get through it, power through it. But when you're done, you should be able to sit down, relax, take a few deep breaths. There's a great book for your listeners. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Yeah. That's a really good book or you can go on YouTube if they don't want to read, they can just type that in. And there's a lot of nice videos where the guy's narrating it and it tells the story of, as zebras don't go to meetings and say, what, I was chased by that lion for the last 3 years. I'm a meal addiction, or something, but as people, what we do is we go tell everybody about all of our bad woes and we wear badges about it. And, they just forget about it. They just go back to eating and living their life.
Yeah. So what is it around how does a negative thought, how is that affecting us?
Well, in order to have a negative thought, your brain has to produce the chemical corresponding reaction to that thought, which is a negative. So what happens is negative thoughts actually produce all the things that quicken your aging process, slow down your metabolism, that like any negative emotion also has to have present in the same scenario, lack of breathing, right? Anger, frustration, fear, all of those negative states, you have to stop breathing. you can't breathe through being angry. If you're breathing, you can't hold on to it. It's like it escapes you. So the reality is when Buddha said, "He who angers you conquers you," that was 5,000 years ago. Now medical science has proven that to be true, because negative thoughts, the book that came out in the 80s called "You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought," they kind of documented what happens chemically as you have a negative thought. And there's a chemical cascade that happens, and the body then has to deal with all that stress and toxins, right? There's only 3 reasons people come to see either of us. It's thoughts, traumas, or toxins, and everything kind of falls into one of those buckets.
Yeah.
So we have our own toxic thoughts. Now, on the flip side of that, positive thoughts create healing, right? When Deepak Chopra did a research project where he took a group of people to a cabin. They had it all fixed up like it was the 50s. They played only 50s music. They had them dressed like the 50s. And all they did was talk about all their good times in the 50s. They actually had chronologically proved that they aged slower. They were healthier when they left.
Yeah.
And there was no real therapy intervention other than the environment. The environment and getting them to believe that they were back in time. Kind of like that movie Cocoon, where the people got that experience. So one thing is we tell people, or we train people, and you've probably known this because you're using BrainTap. I always have you put together your success reel in each of the series, so you can wake up in the morning unconsciously remembering all those positives, because there's never been a day like today. But if you put in your filters and say, "Oh, today's bad, I don't know what's going to happen." I love it when I say to somebody, "How you doing?" He goes, okay so far." And I'm knowing, oh no, they're setting themselves up for something, so they're doing it, or they go, "No problems yet." So they're looking around the world looking for those problems. And if you look for them, you'll find them.
It's so interesting. One of the things I have an affirmation for myself every day, in that may I be energized as my day progresses, so that I have enough energy for my family and for everything that I want to do tonight. And it's amazing when you go in with that plan and it actually occurs, you go, "Oh, I can actually write it to win," why
right.
not? Why not do it this way?
Yeah, that's the misconception. And I know while you're doing like Tai Chi and that, you learn that you get energy not just from foods and beverages. You get energy from your environment. Most of your energy comes from your breath, in how you balance yourself. So there's a lot more to, if you rely too heavily on just what you eat or drink, but your thoughts get in the way. I know a lot of people that eat healthy so they won't get sick.
Yeah.
And they get really sick.
Right.
Because I tell them it's the Job effect. When somebody asks me, and Job in the Bible says, "What I have feared greatly has come upon me." So if they're eating that way so they won't get sick, your brain doesn't process a negative. So all it hears is, "Eat this way, get sick."
It is. And this is such an important conversation to have in light of world pandemic, and, coronavirus is here to stay. And, lo and behold, it really is about our metabolic health. And this is such an important conversation to share. So in this negative thought component and versus positive thought, what if you have like negative family members? Will BrainTap still work for them? So you're like we are literally right now surrounded. It is out there. If you tune into it, you'll definitely get tons of negativity.
Crisis
news.
I was being interviewed. Yeah, I was being interviewed in Tucson, Arizona years ago when one of my first book came out, Awaken the Genius. And the guy was interviewing me, and after the show was done, because you're only on TV for like 6 or 7 minutes, but I stuck around to talk with him. He said, "I'm very interested in this." He says, "I'm really into positive thinking. We started an all positive news network."
Yeah.
It didn't last 3 months. He said, "It was amazing." He said, "We had a bus driver." He said, "We got a group of people to fund it because a bus driver saved the lives of 43 kids. The bus went over a cliff. Nobody got hurt. Didn't make the news."
Yeah.
That should have been everywhere. He said, "You would be amazed. For every negative story that's in the news, there's 100 positive, heartfelt stories going on in that same town, but they won't put it in the news because people won't watch it." Think about when you're going down the highway and somebody gets in an accident. Everybody's got to stop, look. They love the train wrecks or whatever. And I think it's just a matter of shifting gears and training people to become more positive. I mean, they do know that having gratitude, like all the big meditation, like they did up in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, they've done a lot of meditation studies with the monks. Yeah. And they asked, "What are you meditating on that you're getting this high gamma activity?" They go, "We have it's the meditation of compassion and gratitude.
Mm.
You know, they're not thinking about a new car they're going to own, or, you know, how much money they're going to have in their bank account. You know, they're bringing that energy through. I mean, and these were guys that were meditating out in the cold, sub-zero weather and melting snow around them.
Yeah.
You know, so they're ones that show what we think this physical world is not what it is. I mean, we've all bought into what it is because that's where we're at, but it's changing very rapidly. And people like yourself and others that are out there sharing with the world saying, hey, you can have a choice here. You can choose to be healthy. You can choose to be positive, regardless. Right now, unfortunately, most people are being governed by the news, and they're not a very good psychologist or health professional. What they are is they generate income for their stockholders. You know, that's about it. You know, they're a money-making institution. They're not out looking for your health. I always get blown away when I tell people, well, I heard it on the news. I go, so what? Right. I mean, what news are you talking about? Where did they get their sources? Was it validated? You know?
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, you look at it, of every third ad is a pharmaceutical drug, and it's like, well, they want to sell more medications. It's a great system that way. This component, you know, one of the things I've been talking about in 2021 is the year that we own our autonomic nervous system. And so having you on the show to really share this technology and all of the research that is there is, I mean, it fits right in here. Like it, you know, now more than ever, it's, you know, I think one of the blessings of this last year, you know, we've had public health has had the ability to educate people about this stuff for a year. And they blew it. They basically put people into fear, into crisis mode, which you're showing is those negative thoughts really sink our immune system. They sink our health. And we wonder, well, why aren't the numbers better out there? Right. I mean, social
and restricting their breathing.
Yes.
I mean, the worst thing you can do is wear a mask.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if they're that bad, they shouldn't even be outside. Just stay in the house, you know, and to make it, when I go to the grocery store and I'm not wearing my mask because it's not a mandate here where I'm at, but people that are, they look at me like I'm a carrier of typhoid fever or something. You know, I'm healthy, and you know, now you know people, and they go get their vaccine and they go, well, I'm free, I'm ready to go, and they don't understand it, that it doesn't stop it, from spreading, doesn't stop you from getting it. It's like, why?
I know that's a fascinating phenomena that has really hit me in this last week of, you know, really wow. So now you can see your 90-year-old mom. Why couldn't you do that before? Do you realize that didn't really change anything for you? But you know, it is, I created, actually, I've got a YouTube video on really a centrist approach to this discussion around informed consent. So I really, you know, folks, get tuned into that. Of actually what it does afford you. And if you want to get the vaccine, that's your choice. That's great. But really understand what it does. It doesn't make you superhuman powers. You still have to take care of this metabolic foundation that we're talking about here. Your autonomic nervous system, coherence, your gratitude. I like the loving kindness meditations out there along these lines. So, you know, how long? So we've got a lot of stressed individuals. We know, you know, mental illness is on the rise, anxiety, depression. How long does it take to feel the effects of brain tapping on de-stressing the body?
One of the things that happened for us during this COVID, we got asked by the National Institute of Health to attend their integrative health conference in Cleveland. Of course, that got derailed like everything else, but we did it online, and we presented a paper where we introduced 100 people to BrainTap. One session, they were able to bring down their stress load by 38.5%. Then we showed in the same study, we kept going for a month. If they did a BrainTap session every other day or every 72 hours, because that's how often your nervous system resets. So every 72 hours, you disrupt that program and put a healthy program in there. That's a BrainTap session or a meditation or whatever you're going to do, Tai Chi, you know, some way to get the nervous system re-engaged into healthy activity. What we found was that became their new baseline. So when they were walking around with this high level stress, you need to have some neuroprotection, which means do something to bring down that stress, because the inflammation is out of the park right now. And that has a lot to do with not just their thoughts, but I mean, when the average person eats over 100 pounds of sugar a year, I mean, the body just doesn't know what to do with all this negative stuff that we're putting into it, from thoughts to substances. So what we find is people start to make healthier choices. You'll notice I'm always talking about drinking water, because we are hydro engines too. Our brain needs a lot of water, a lot of healthy fats to function correctly. And, those are things that unfortunately the media, they don't really promote water that much. They promote sodas, they promote juices, but they don't promote water. We need healthy, good water, for our body to work properly. And we need sunshine, and we need sleep, as a core essentials in healthy foods. But people aren't getting any of those things, right? Alcohol's up 400% during this time.
400, right? An essential business, right?
Yeah.
It is so fascinating, right? I mean, think clean water, clean air, clean food. These are light. That is the foundation of health. It is that simple.
Right.
And we've kind of convoluted it so much. So on this kind of rampant inflammation in our world right now. And I know I've been having conversations with those in their 40s and 50s, watching their aging parents really go into significant cognitive decline. The stats on dementia and Alzheimer's are staggering, 50% over the age of 65. Just recently heard in the actuarial database of Blue Cross Blue Shield, the average age of dementia now is 47 years old in that system. So the age is going younger and younger into cognitive decline. We are swimming in the soup, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And this is an aspect of, ways of owning our autonomic nervous system. This is foundational work, folks. This is, on your purpose, your passion, that mindset component, as Patrick shared, just taking the vitamins, in a relaxed, coherent state, you're absorbing the nutrients better, right? So we're investing in that. So we really need the platform and our foundation to be settled and set. So let's flip the discussion a little bit on the optimization, because I know we've got a lot of listeners that are really into biohacking and pushing the limits. So what are you seeing in that realm?
Well, one thing I want to first mention, that any brain can heal at any age. Yes. The brain is like the liver. It does not, the liver can, they have surgeries now where you get a third of a liver and it grows back a whole liver, so the brain is the same way. What we need to do is get the toxins out though. The only way to start first to optimize is you got to get deep sleep. So in 2016, the May issue of American Scientific, they actually came out with an article that showed that we have glial lymphomic vessels in the brain. Now, they were always there, but the medical community admitted that they were there then. So they found them. It's kind of like finding America. There was already people here, but that's okay. Yeah. So what they showed was this vessel, the reason they didn't see it before, it only reveals itself when you're in level 4 sleep. So just like we have a blood-brain barrier, we have a toxic barrier for releasing those toxins into our system. And it doesn't happen all at once. So some of your listeners might have experienced where they woke up in the middle of the night, they had sleep paralysis, that deep, they call it level 4 sleep because it's sleep paralysis. You can't move, you're just there, but you're taken offline while your body cleanses. And this usually happens 7 to 8 times at night. If it's happening, that's the first optimization. Sleep becomes your superpower. Yeah. Most people will agree with that. And then the next thing we see, we did a study in Florida. We're now in a bigger study. We're now recruiting people. And if anybody out there wants to join it, please reach out to me. We're looking for people who qualify, 55, 65 years old. Our pilot study, we had everyone go to their medical doctor, get diagnosed. They said, you have onset dementia. We had them take the Cambridge Science Test, which is an online testing system where you do these activities. It measures brain speed and all these kind of things. Yeah. And so they all scored. They were on the dementia scale. We then had them, we use a product called Wabi, which measures brain speed. Yeah. And so we were able to measure their brain, and we found out that their left hemisphere was actually moving slower than their right hemisphere. So they were not in coherence, right? We were just talking about that. That didn't have that balance going. So what does that mean to the person? As we grow older, because of stress, our brain deregulates. And we push through things. Remember, these bodies were designed to live in the Serengeti. In the afternoon, we should be taking naps, just like the lions and everybody else. Don't want to be out in that heat. our bodies haven't evolved as much as our lifestyle has, right? So what happened during the study, though, is we said, if you come into the study, you've got to do BrainTap 3 times a day. Morning, we have what we call digital coffee. We wake up the brain and we train it with something called SMR, sensory motor rhythm training. This is the part of the brain that, as we get better looking and more intelligent with age, atrophies, right? That's why we start stumbling. It also has to do with the vestibular system. So we've actually proven that if you listen to these sessions, your balance gets better without doing any exercise. It's a brain thing. So now if you do the exercises with the brain thing, it even works better. So, we're kind of assisting. So we do that first thing in the morning because we got to disengage that delta brain. Mm-hmm. Because what happens before, if you keep that brain, like I talked about, it's like running through the day with a parachute behind you. By the end of the day, you're just dead tired and you don't want to talk to anybody. You just want to pass out, but then you can't sleep that well because you're so tired. That's kind of one of those scenarios. In the middle of the day, we did a whole series of sessions. These are theta trainings in the middle of the day to reboot the brain. Most of our sessions, 90% are these, because these are the times, like in the middle of the afternoon at 2:00 every day, wherever you're at around the world, 2:00 around that time, your temperature in your body's going to drop 2 degrees because your body's going to reset. It's the time when the body resets. Also resets at 3:30 in the morning. That's why people wake up typically around that time in the middle of the night. So, but what do we do as a culture? Oh, it's tea time. It's time to get a coffee if you're in Seattle, right? Or somewhere like that. So that's, and now the whole world thinks that, right? So now we're stimulating, and that's okay too, but you can stimulate also with meditation, relaxation techniques, and things like that. So they had to do the reboot, which we have a brain fitness series. It's all about cognitive skills. And then at night, we have a sleep series. It's called Go to Sleep. In that sleep series, and what's most important is we told them every time you do it, you just go through the cycle, every time listening to a different program, because we want to do something called neuroplasticity. Yeah. And for your listeners, they probably heard you say this before, but neuroplasticity is, think of it as the way in which your brain can reorganize. You can also think about it like computer speed. So when you go get an upgrade for a computer, you go, hey, I want a slower computer. Everybody wants a faster computer. They want to, so it shows brain speed. So what we showed in the study, so we sent them home. They had to do the BrainTap those 3 times. We tracked them. They did the 3. They came back. We already knew they were better, much better, because we had them doing a lot of different skills tests. We sent them back to their doctor. Their doctor couldn't believe his diagnosis that he just gave them 6 weeks earlier. He said, I wouldn't have put down that you were in 6 weeks. I wouldn't have told you that you had dementia if you had came to me like this. So we got that, but he said, we can't take it away because there's no cure for dementia, right? Because cures are owned by the medical community, and as long as it doesn't have a pharmaceutical product attached to it, it's not a cure. So I said, that's not a problem. We don't care if you're cured. We care that the symptoms are gone. Right. That you're more relaxed, you remember names, you're able to finish tasks, you're able to be on your own. So they came back, we had them do the Cambridge skills testing. They now scored in the normal range for their age groups. When we did the brain scan, this was the most incredible part. Their brain was now balanced, working in harmony with each other. We have a series inside the app called The New Mind that doctors get to use with their clients. Yeah. So that's one that the left hemisphere is, we actually can train the hemispheres to go at different speeds with BrainTap. So we have a clinical program like that. And then what happens is we do the WABI to find out their neuroplasticity. The average neuroplastic change was 49% in 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks?
In 6 weeks. And their ability to reassess the heart rate part of it was how do you go from a stressed event to a normalizing event was improved by 58%, which means that before they would get, when you have dementia, unfortunately, when you get stressed out or angry or whatever, you just can't get out of it.
Stuck in it.
You're locked into it. So now, because of that study, we took it to we're partners with Duke University. So we took it to the people at Duke. We said, hey, what do you think about this? They're going, I can't believe it. Here's the data. Here's what we did. You need a bigger study. So we went back. We're partners with Seminole College in Florida. And they've actually given us a department, their research department. They've set it up with BrainTap and everything. We worked with their golf team that's the national champions. So we're now working with their baseball team down there. So we have chairs set up. They have their own brain tapping room at the college. Yeah. And So they're helping us organize this. So when people are doing this new group that we're putting together, if you qualify and you want to do that, just get a hold of BrainTap and tell them, hey, I want to participate in the dementia study. Because after 6 weeks, if they did all those things, we gifted them the BrainTap so they could keep doing it. Because we know that it's meditating or doing BrainTap is kind of like brushing your teeth. You don't have to brush your teeth, but if you want teeth, you do it, right? So that's the same thing with doing what we're talking about, and especially if you're already compromised.
Yeah.
Now we can't say we cure anyone, but what we can say is that initial pilot study was very promising. Yeah. Anybody we show those results to are blown away. And it can happen for anybody. These were not special people. These were not meditators. These people did not eat healthy. We didn't change their diet. We didn't do anything.
How long were those sessions? How long were the sessions on the 3 sessions?
The session in the morning is 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The session in midday is 20. In the session in the evening, they can choose between a 20 to a 30-minute session. But it trails off and so a lot of them didn't use the lights at night.
Yeah.
They just listened to the audio because the headset, if you fall asleep, it can be kind of unruly. So, but you can, if you practice enough, just the sound alone can get you to that deep delta that you need at night.
Wow. That is awesome. So between 55, 65. So if I've got a slew of patients, unfortunately, in that, and that's really what we're seeing is the rise. So mild cognitive.
You want to be part of the study? We'll make you one of the doctors in it. Let's talk.
I love it. I'm on board. I was like, I'm taking notes here. So that's what you see me looking down. I'm taking these notes with you. So in closing, Patrick, I mean, this has been phenomenal. You've given me chills multiple times during this interview. I know it's an on fire component. Any in closing message that you would like to share with folks?
The one that I usually like to leave people with is to realize that you have a greater potential for health, vitality, more joy, love in your life than anyone's ever told you. You simply have to open your mind to those possibilities, get rid of the stress, embrace the true love that's inside you, and let's let it shine, man.
Love it. Thank you, everybody. This is What the Health. Patrick Porter of BrainTap, really dropping some amazing knowledge on the show. Look, if you got anything out of this, I want you to think of 2 people that you love in your life and share this show with them. This is incredible, revolutionary information to get going. Share it with them. And if you like the show, please go out, give us a 5-star review. Tell us what you learned in the episode so that other people can tune in to What the Health. Like, you've got to ask yourself why I created it is I just put my hands up of what the health is going on out there. We have this research. This is research-based evidence. Like, we are training people on living their full potential. We haven't even reached there yet. So I really want to help people push the bounds. I love that love and light message at the end. Patrick, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for helping me reach those billion brains. That's our mission.
I love it. Everybody, this is What the Health, and we are here on the Contact Radio every Tuesday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. You can also find us on the World Wide Web. Tune in and learn. Thanks.